If there is one cake that would say it is a very traditional German cake, it is this bee sting cake. In German, we call this Bienenstich, and you will find this cake in almost every bakery in Germany. And what I have found is whenever I make this recipe, everyone reaches out and says how much they love it. So we are going to make a yeast dough. First, you want to heat up your milk with butter, and then we are going to add the yeast. Always make sure that you do not add yeast to any hot mixture. If you add it to your hot mixture, it will actually end up killing your yeast and it will not rise. We are going to put that with flour and then a little bit of salt, and we are going to mix for a good amount of time, for about 7 minutes. You want to make sure that your gluten develops well. One tip that I would give you is that I like to use my Bosh Mixer just because it is very good for bready types of doughs. We're going to let our dough rest, and then we are going to start with our pastry cream. Now, in this video, I am going to show you how to make the easy version, which is in Germany, we often just use the Oetker pudding mix. I'm even stumbling over my words here, but you are just going to make it with a pudding mix. I would not recommend using an American version just because the taste is just not the same. You're going to heat up milk, and then you're just going to add a little bit of sugar. I also like to put a little bit of the milk to the side and then add my pudding mixture into it. Now, if you want to go all in, I do often make my own pastry cream, and I will have a recipe below for you for your own pastry cream where you would just substitute the pudding mixture instructions with making your own pastry cream and then adding 350 grams of heavy whipping cream. So I will leave the link below, but this is the easy to go to. And honestly, with this recipe, in most German recipes, you will see that people are using the pudding mixture. So you're going to make your pudding, and then we are going to let the pudding also just chill and rest. It is important that when you do put it into your bowl that you cover it right away with saran wrap, and the saran wrap needs to be touching your pudding mixture. We're going to let this rest, and then we are going on to the next step. Now, what makes this dessert so good is really the topping, the almond topping. And this is very simple to make. You are just adding some sugar, some butter, some heavy whipping cream, and then you are also actually going to add honey. Now, it doesn't have to be the best quality honey, but it does it does make a difference. However, it's just a little bit of honey that goes in there, and then you are also just going to be adding your almonds. You cannot really substitute the topping. I mean, you might be able to. However, what makes this cake so special is the almond topping and the combination. I also think one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that this cake is a yeast based, and so it is a lot more doughy, and it's not like a typical cake, so it's a little bit firmer. Now we are going to prepare our dough, and what you're going to do is just spray your pan. You take your proof dough, which looks like this. You can see it proofed nicely, and then we're going to roll it out. Now keep in mind you want to put this into your cake pan, so roll it out slow and make sure that you are kind of keeping that shape, the round shape, because then we are going to add this into our cake pan. Also, here is kind of my tip. If you are new to this, I would say use a 10-inch cake pan. That will give you a little bit of a higher rise, and it will be a little bit bigger, which will make it easier to cut through. If you are an expert and you feel like you want to try the 12-inch, that's totally fine. It will be harder to slice then, but I like a little bit more cream and less cake. So next, we are adding the almond topping, and you're going to let it rest now for another 10 minutes, and then we're going to bake it for about 30 minutes. This is what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. You do want to remove the ring around it immediately. Otherwise, it will really get stuck. And then we're going to move on to making our heavy whipping cream. So you're just going to add your whipping cream. You're going to add Sahnesteif, which is, I think in English is called Whippet. It's a German stabilizer for whipped cream, and we're just going to whip it. until it is nice and hard, not hard, nice and whipped. So just make sure that it's all the way whipped. You can tell with the stabilizer it is a little bit harder than regular whipped cream, but you do want that. We're going to take that out of the bowl and we're going to put that into a separate bowl. And at this point, your pudding mixture or your pastry cream should have already mixed and cooled down. And so you are going to add that to the mixer, and I like to whip it again just to get any clumps out and to make it really like smooth. So that's what I do, and then you are going to remove this. Now you're going to add the pudding mixture with the whipping cream, and you can also just kind of gently fold it in. At this stage, I like to do everything by hand, and then I like to kind of mix it together. Now, you can also strain your pudding mixture. That's what I typically do with my pastry cream, but it's totally fine with this one. This is kind of me taking the easy way out right now. So now we're going to cut it, and remember right here, this is a 10-inch. You do need a good cake cutting knife, and you want to be slow with it. I like to kind of use my tart pan, or I even have like a cake lifter to kind of like slide it under, and then you're just going to kind of like move it to the side. But you can see that it is much more bready than like a cake. And then the most important part about this cake is that you pre-slice the top, because if you do not do this, what is going to happen is once you start cutting into it and you did not pre-slice the top, all your cream is going to go out. Now, some recipes will say you can add gelatin. I don't think that's the traditional way, and it is not going to be a super firm cream, so it will squeeze out a little bit, but that is okay. Now, if you want it to be a little bit firmer, you can always add the gelatin, but now we're going to use a cake ring, and we're going to put the bottom layer, and then we're just going to put the cream all the way on top. And then comes the fun part of just taking your pre-sliced top slices and assembling them on top. Now, some recipes say you can sprinkle powdered sugar on it. I don't think that's necessary because this cake is just so pretty in and of itself. But this is how you would make the traditional Bienenstich from your home, with the easy way out, with the pudding pulver, with the Oetker. And it is super easy. It is important that you at least let this cake sit in the refrigerator for 1 hour for the cream to kind of set, and then you are going to just cut around the cake ring, and you're going to have this very, very beautiful Bienenstich. I have the full recipe on my website at Raven Cakes Bakery, and I would love for you to subscribe and follow along for more baking recipes that are authentic to German cuisine. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.